This week we're talking about episode 8 of House of the Dragon, Lord of the Tides. Now, the Lord of the Tides is, of course, Corlys, aka the Sea Snake. Now, he's currently stationed in the Stepstones, where he's been severely injured in battle. So much so that he's currently on death's door and now being asked about who will sit on the throne at Driftmark if he does die.
That's right, Abby. So Corlys had previously said that he wanted Rhaenyra's son, Viserys, to be the next Lord of the Tides, but Corlys's brother, Sir Vaemond, has had a real issue with this because he knows, as most of the kingdom do, that Viserys is not a legitimate heir to the throne. So he takes this matter to the king and queen. He says, look, Driftmark is my birthright. You can't just be handing it off to some randomer. And he also makes the point that if war breaks out, you don't really want a 10-year-old boy to be the head of your navy rather than a seasoned veteran like himself. So this all comes to a head at a trial in King's Landing.
Yeah, Daemon and Rhaenyra have travelled to King's Landing to make their case, and Vaemond also rocks up. They're all in the throne room. Everyone is gathered there, and Vaemond is going on and on and on about how Driftmark should be his, it should belong to him, and Daemon thinks, you know what, just shut up, takes his sword and lops his head off. It's a pretty gruesome, pretty dramatic moment, but it was also needed, right? Vaemond would not shut up. I was willing him to stop. He wasn't going to, so Daemon took matters into his own hands and made it happen. I, for one, was a big fan.
Absolutely. And there was really no way back for Vaemond when he made those accusations about the legitimacy of Viserys and Rhaenyra's other children. I think one way or another he would have met a grisly end. The trial is also noteworthy for a heroic entrance made by Viserys, who earlier in the episode was completely bedridden. You know, the previous 6 years have really not been kind to him, and it looks like he could pass away at any moment, quite frankly. So it was quite moving to see him make the effort to attend this session, which was clearly so important to his daughter. And my boy Viserys, he continues to deliver throughout this episode. Later we see a family dinner where he calls for unity among his family. You can really tell that it breaks his heart to see so much infighting between the Targaryens and the Velaryons. He really just wants them all to come together. And I feel like for a moment there was hope that it could work.
Yeah, for a moment it looks like Alicent and Rhaenyra are going to repair those old wounds that run so deep. They have a little moment, the pair are standing together looking into one another's eyes, and one of them reaches out and takes the other's hand. And it's genuinely heartwarming and poignant, and we haven't seen any of that from them in recent years, and it harked back to their friendship as children, as young women, and as you were saying, David, in a previous conversation, House of the Dragon is lacking those genuine, heartfelt, good-natured friendships and relationships between characters that you can really get behind and back. We haven't seen an awful lot of that, but we did see it here, which was lovely. But of course, as it always does, things went very badly wrong, didn't they?
Well, exactly. I mean, considering how pious and righteous Alicent Hightower is, I'm quite surprised how awful her children have turned out to be. I would argue that the main source of conflict at this dinner came from her children, Aegon and Aemond, who were both just kind of taunting Rhaenyra's sons and causing trouble, making nasty comments. Of course, it all blew up. And any hope that this family could come back together sort of withered away in front of us.
Now, there was a really interesting moment towards the end of this episode. It was a conversation between Alicent and Viserys. He's once again holed up in his chamber in bed after suffering that nasty episode at the dinner. And he says to her, essentially, you are the prince that was promised, the figure who will unite the Seven Kingdoms, unite the realm against the darkness, the impending winter. And she certainly seems confused. And you were a little bit confused as well, David, about what was going on.
Yeah, I found this scene quite hard to interpret. I think it was quite clear that Viserys thought that he was talking to Rhaenyra, but in his kind of medicated delirium didn't realise that it was actually Alicent. What confuses me is how Alicent interprets those words. Does she realise that he thinks he's talking to Rhaenyra, and does he realise that he doesn't view Alicent's own children as the future of the realm? Or does she think that he actually intends to be relaying that information to her, and thus is taking it as a mission that she is the future and she needs to fight even harder to make sure her kids get on the throne. I mean, how did you interpret it, Abby?
I very much took it as Alicent now sees that as a directive to essentially do whatever she wants. That is the green light from him. Whether she knows that he was actually referring to somebody else or she thinks that he was genuinely referring to her, I don't know. I think that's up for debate. But now I think she will see this as the go-ahead, the thumbs up to crack on and essentially do whatever she wants, which of course is going to shatter that newly rekindled friendship between her and Rhaenyra.
And now it's time for Head of the House. This is the part of the show where we pick the character who stood out to us most this week. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'm going to go with Viserys again. This might be the second or third time that I've done this, but I just feel like all the other characters on the show are a bit horrible. And although Viserys made some terrible decisions towards the start of the series, I think he's come on in just leaps and bounds. He's really had such an incredible arc. And at this point in the show, is the most sympathetic character by far. I mean, you can just tell that he has so much love and care for the family in his life, and all he wants is for them to get along, and my heart just breaks for him, particularly at this late stage in his life where it looks like he is going to pass away soon. So frail. And I think Paddy Considine is giving the performance of his life. When awards season comes, let's just throw every award at him. He deserves it. What would you say, Abby? Who's your head of the house?
This week, I'm going to go for Daemon. Now, we didn't have an awful lot to do this week, but there was one particular moment which won it for me, and that was when he lopped off Vaemon's head. Vaemon was just going on and on and on, and I was just finding it quite tiresome and boring. And also, he's a bit character, right? And we just don't want to hear a lot from those side characters. They don't really add an awful lot to proceedings. So I was grateful that he stepped in and made him stop. Thank you, Daemon.
Could always rely on Daemon to throw a spanner in the works. Well, that brings to a close this episode of Beyond the Dragon. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. You can catch up on House of the Dragon. It airs Mondays at 9 p.m. on Sky Atlantic. You can also watch whenever you like on the streaming service now. We'll be back next week with more discussion on the latest developments in Westeros. For now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.